Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's virtual event featuring Carpineto Wine Estates. My name is Shannon, and I'm a part of the New Hampshire Liquor and Wine Outlet social team. We have a super special event for you tonight as part of the 90 Days Around the World promotion. We have visited so many wonderful places and met with some of the wine industry's biggest brand names, and tonight we're traveling all the way to Tuscany, Italy. So I'm actually joined by a few experts tonight. We have Antonio Zaccheo, the winemaker and VP of Carpineto Wine Estates. We also have Chad Gibson of the New Hampshire Liquor and Wine Outlets marketing team. Antonio has a super exciting presentation to share with us tonight, and I'm here to share any questions with him that you may have throughout the event. So please be sure to leave those in the comments section. Chad's here to answer any questions you may have regarding inventory or availability in all of our New Hampshire liquor and wine outlets. So for those of you that have pre-registered for tonight's event, we're going to be giving away a 2013 signed bottle of Carpineto Vino Noble. We're going to be asking a trivia question for that, so be sure that you're listening super closely to tonight's event. Tonight's presentation as well. And we will be contacting the winners of that via email, so make sure you're staying close to your inbox. And with that, I will pass it off to you, Antonio. What can you tell us about Carpineto wines?
Thank you very much, Shannon. I will do my screen share here, and we'll get off to the races. Incidentally, the 2013 Vino Nobile, which we're giving away a couple of years ago, was a top 100 Wine Spectator wine. So it's quite a prize. So I hope you pay good attention, but also drink some wine. You know, you don't have to take only notes, because that would go against the Tuscan spirit. Anyways, so I start in on my presentation, and feel free to ask questions, and we can pause, Shannon, anytime during this our little presentation here, and answer questions. So we'll talk a little bit about Tuscany, then we'll talk about Carpineto, some of our history, our philosophy, and then we'll basically take a tasting tour of Tuscany and visit all the estates, and look at the various wines we make, and also what are the typical food pairings for, and some of them are not so typical, that we typically have over here. So Tuscany is quite a special place, because we have given lots to Italy. In fact, we have given Italy its language. It was in the 1300s when a poet by the name of Dante Alighieri, you may have heard of him, he wrote the Divine Comedy, the story about hell, where I will probably go, but then paradise and purgatory were also there. And he essentially wrote this poem, a very long poem, in vulgar Italian, basically the layman's language, because he wanted the people to understand what he was writing about. And you know, up to then, noble families and the church, the clergy, would all write in Latin, and of course the people in the streets didn't understand Latin, and he wanted to be understood. So that evolved to become the Italian language. So Tuscany has given a lot to Italy. The most important thing is his language. Anyway, so Tuscany is a major wheat, olive oil, and wine producer, always has been, and today we continue this tradition. And we've been making wine, because that's what we are talking about here today, since the Etruscans. So imagine, that's almost 3,000 years of winemaking history. It's also been a very, Florence has always been a very important wine market. It's estimated that back then, in the 1300s, the wine trade was somewhere around 6 million gallons per year. The wine consumption in Tuscany back then was somewhere around 1 gallon per head per week. Imagine, let me say that again. 1 gallon per head per week. So, Florence, at the time of Dante Alighieri, obviously he needed lots of inspiration, but he found it in Chianti, and he definitely did a good job with that, but it was a very happy town. So this is how wine used to flow from the Chianti Hills down to Florence on these carts. Actually, we have a museum at the winery, and that cart is actually in our museum. It's been fixed up. But that, for centuries, that cart has gone from Greve in Chianti all the way down to Florence, of course, full, and then it would backhaul empty bottles. So this whole business about recycling, and it's something that we've been doing for centuries, refilling bottles hundreds of times, which is why the straw covered bottle was invented, because it could pile up like this, and it could withstand a few bangs on the way up and on the way down. But that's how the fiasco would actually be the vessel that would bring happiness to Florence. So that's a little bit of recent history, actually. Today, Tuscany is basically 2/3 hillsides. Then, and that's where the vineyards, the olive groves are. We got about a quarter of our landscape is mountains, and that's where the wild boar and the venison and the pheasants live, and the porcini mushrooms in the fall can be found, the chestnuts and all of that good stuff. And then in the valleys is where some of the cities are, and where we grow wheat, and where we also grow tobacco, because that is also a very important part of our history. This is what Tuscany looks like. Tuscany is essentially a mosaic of vineyards, olive groves, and woods. We don't have large expanses of monoculture. This is all small little pieces of land that are put together much like a puzzle. And this is where the appellations are. So halfway, this is Siena, this is Florence. Halfway between Florence and Siena, we have the Chianti Classico appellation. Then on the southern part of Siena, by Montepulciano, is where the Vino Nobile appellation is, and that's where Brunello di Montalcino is. And then on the coast, we have a large area called Maremma. And of course, that's Tuscany. It's right there on the Italian boot. This is a little look at the size of the appellations. So important appellations. Let's pick on the smallest, which was the first appellation in Italy when we started with the denominations. Look, Vino Nobile, it's a little over 3,000 acres. Brunello, very famous, but it's only 5,000 acres. Chianti Classico is the biggest of the classic Tuscan appellations, and it's not even 17,000 acres. It's a third of Napa. So Napa, considered to be in the US a boutique appellation, well, it's 3 times the size of Chianti Classico, and Napa is double Chianti Classico, Brunello, and Vino Nobile altogether. So you can put all of the Tuscan heritage inside half of Napa. So, and on top of that, everything is dry farmed, everything is hillside, and so therefore our yields at the end of the day are quite low. So not that many bottles come out of this land. And notice another thing, even in for example, in Brunello, we are actually growing less than 10% of the potential of the appellation. That is because, and here in Vino Nobile is somewhere around 8%, in Chianti Classico is clearly 10%. Basically, out of the potential of the appellation, we as producers are going around picking only the filet mignon of that appellation, and plenty vineyards there. And then the rest, of course, we need olive oil, and so we plant olive trees. And then the rest is left woods and wheat and all the other tomatoes, of course, and all the other things that Tuscans love so much. But that is a key aspect here of our Tuscan landscape. This is, according to the Consorzio del Vino Nobile, it is essentially the ratings of all the recent appellations in the past, several years. Of course, 5 is the maximum, and you can see, how Tuscany, well, Italy in general, being a peninsula right in the middle of the Mediterranean, how wonderful the weather is here, really on a constant basis. Very rarely have we had bad vintages. 2014 was slightly below average. 2002 was terrible, but everything else, in the past 30 years, really, we've had a lot of really, really good vintages. So we are, definitely blessed by that. Possibly the closeness to the Vatican also helps, and the fact that we are Catholics and pray every Sunday for good weather also doesn't hurt. At least that's my theory. Of course, in Tuscany, we grow Sangiovese. Sangiovese is actually Italy's most widely planted grape. It is a grape variety that is native to this area here: Tuscany, Upper Lazio, Umbria, and Emilia-Romagna, right where the circle is. And there are, of course, like any, good traditional Italian family, we have a lot of sons, divided in basically clones. And so we have Sangiovese di Romagna, which comes from the hills above Bologna. Then Sangiovese dell'Alto Chianti, that is around the Chianti Classico region. Morellino comes from Maremma on the coast. Sangiovese Grosso is the Brunello clone, which is an identical clone to the Prugnolo Gentile of Vino Nobile. And then in Umbria, we also have another distinct clonal selection. But overall, a Sangiovese is known for having good acidity. It's a medium-bodied wine, beautiful floral characters, and beautiful red fruits. Those are the trademark characteristics of Sangiovese. This is a scalagram, basically, where I'm showing what several distinct clonal variations look like on a plot. So, for example, you can see here the average of the cultivar is the red line, but then you can have varietals that are a little bigger on the spicy, more on the sweet floral, more on the red fruits, more on structure, more on astringency, etc., etc. And that is part of the fun, because when you have several dozen clones that you're farming on all these small individual plots, which basically are, 3 acres, 7 acres, 2 acres. Some of these clones are very ancient clones. You're basically mixing just a whole variety of flavors together. And this is when the sum of the individual parts really become synergistic and make a much larger total. So that is the fun that us winemakers here in Tuscany get to play with. Not only do we have all these various land and soil types, but then we have dozens and dozens of clones, and everybody, of course, is very excited about the clones that are typical to their particular little township. So a little bit about Carpineto. Carpineto, we are a relatively young winery in Tuscany because we are only founded in 1967. When, in Tuscany, we've been making wine, as I said, since Etruscan time, and many wineries go back centuries. So we are a young winery, and we were founded by these two guys. In their early 20s, very recklessly, these two guys are on the left-hand side Giancarlo Sacchetti. He, unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, but his daughter has taken over. And on the right-hand side is my father. And these two guys in their early 20s, with a couple of pennies to scrape together, essentially decided that they wanted to make a great Chianti Classico in a time when Chianti used to be traveling with those carts that I showed you with the fiascos, on top, and so they wanted to make a great Chianti Classico, and so that's how they started. It obviously they did quite well. They had very clear ideas, both had experience in the field, and so they took off. They hit the ground running, as we say. This is the second generation with my sister Francesca on the left-hand side. She is in the office. Then we have Caterina, our chief winemaker. Then it's me, and then on the right-hand side we have Elisabetta, that also is in the office on the administration side. So that's the new generation that's working, the farm. But then we also have my son that's sitting in the middle here between myself and my father, who is 22 and has essentially joined the company a couple of years ago, mostly working in the cellars, and now he's out in the fields. We're pruning right now, so that's his main job. Also because there are no visitors, as you can imagine. So there is no wine dinners or no dinners at the farm or anything going on. So we're basically all hands-on on all the agricultural activities. But anyways, he's joined, and he's the third generation of Carpineto. Well, today we export wines to 70 countries around the world. All 50 states, I'm very honored to say, and we've been in New Hampshire for, God, I'm not sure. It's got to be over 30 years. It's been a long, long time. And I've been coming in January to New Hampshire for, it's got to be over 20 years. And it's always been a wonderful experience, both from, well, not always from a weather standpoint, but certainly from a human standpoint, it's always been great. Carpineto, we've had the honor of being in our history 4 times part of the top 100 of Wine Spectator, one time with the bottle that we're giving away, so pay attention. It's meant to be a good party, that bottle. And then also in London, back in '94, Giancarlo Sacchetti won Winemaker of the World award, the first Italian to win this award. And so that was a quarter century after we were founded. And that got us from being an unknown winery to a little known winery. But nevertheless, it got us the impetus to start sharing our wine with more and more people. And that was certainly a good thing. Today we run about 400 acres of our own vineyards, and then we have a couple of 100 more acres of vineyards that we lease, we rent from our neighbors. But certainly we want to farm all of the vineyards ourselves with our own tractors, so that we control the grapes fully. Produce about 300,000 cases. Of course, most of it is red and most of it is Sangiovese, as we just said. And this is where our estates are. So we have a couple of estates here in the Chianti Classico region, one in Vino Nobile, di Montepulciano, Montalcino, Brunello, and in Maremma. And we'll take some pictures, show you some pictures of all of these places. So let's talk a little bit about our winemaking philosophy. So certainly we're Sangiovese specialists. We love Sangiovese. We are obsessed by Sangiovese, but we do have a love affair with Cabernet, with Merlot, with we are we love farming grapes, and but certainly Sangiovese is the main course for us. Respected terroir, terroir means that we make appellation wines, even though the laws have been relaxed to allow international grape varieties. When we make a Chianti Classico or a Pinot Nobile, for example, they're only going to be made out of 100% indigenous grapes. Our wines are vegan friendly because we basically have worked on the spontaneous stabilization of our wines and clarification of our wines for almost 30 years. And then we are working towards carbon neutrality, and that is something that we're very keen on. So you can see all the solar panels here. How do we do that? Obviously with solar panels, so we make our own sustainable energy on all of the estates. This is the Pinot Nobile, where we have the biggest roof. And so here is where we have the most energy, 150 kilowatts. Then we've been working on lightening bottles for years. And in the last 5 years, we have lightened the glass of Dogaiolo 14% and the Reservas 17%, because glass is our #1 contributor to CO2 emissions. So the less glass we can use, the less we emit. And so based on that, on making our own energy and emitting less, also using more efficient engines, and making wines that are just vegan friendly and without additives or anything. Our wines, and plus the fact that we have 500 acres of woods. Well, we are able to absorb 26% more CO2 than we emit into the atmosphere. Now, are we done yet? No, I think we can still do a few things, and we're working on them. And so we're gonna improve on that number. So stay tuned. And then we are terroir, so we are only as good as our dirt. And our founding fathers have been great hunters of great dirt. And this is just a little sample. This is a little seafood platter, not from the coastal town of New Hampshire, Portsmouth. This is actually from Montepulciano. It's fossilized seashells from 5 million years ago. Anyways, that's a little curiosity when you come and see us. Then we're great people. So we have a lady by the name of Sean Dorr, who's not on this call, I don't believe, but anyways, she is available to come to New Hampshire and work the market. And then we are a very innovative company. So we've been making, so as I said, we love, of course, Sangiovese, but we've been experimenting with international grape varieties since the 70s. And in mid-80s, we released Farnito Cab, which incidentally is one of the wines that have been top 100 on the Spectator, and the current vintage is quite highly regarded, and off and on it comes to the liquor shop. Dogaiolo is a Best Buy, typical Best Buy in all the media, and we've been making this wine for 30 years. And essentially, when we launched Dogaiolo, we invented the everyday Super Tuscan category. Because for less than $15, you can drink a Super Tuscan every day. Then we've been the first sparkling winemakers in central Tuscany. That is because Giancarlo Zaccheo went to the Cornigliano School of Winemaking, which is in the Prosecco country. And so, of course, he loved, he also made his own beer. I mean, he just loved fermentation of all kinds. Even made his own yogurt. I mean, just a fun guy. And then we've been the first producers of Sangiovese in Montepulciano with Sant'Enrico already in 1998. So now let's go and look at our estate in Gaville, where we experimented with Super Tuscans already, 40 years ago. This estate is an estate that's focused on Super Tuscans and olive oil, because everybody, of course, makes olive oil in Tuscany. And it's a hilltop estate with excellent ventilation. And this is what it looks like. That's a mosaic I showed you earlier of where you're using the filet mignon for the grapes. And the second choice for the olives, which are just benevolent weeds, that give you great product. And so that's essentially the landscape there. And that's where we developed Dogaiolo, the Dogaiolo line, which has a white, a rosé, and a red. But the white is essentially a blend of 3 grapes, about a third each. Chardonnay brings in body, Sauvignon Blanc, nice aromatics, Grechetto, and nice mineral character. It's just a beautiful bottle of wine. Dogaiolo has the acacia leaves on the front label because when the wine is released in the spring, they are in full bloom. And so that was the inspiration because it is also a very floral glass of wine. Possible pairings, well, aperitivo. Now we'll all be wearing masks here, but nevertheless, we can just stay a couple of feet apart further and enjoy a glass of Dogaiolo Bianco. Great with vegetarian pizzas, like this. Great with young cheeses. Imagine a mozzarella, for example, or a fresh pecorino. And you guys have access to some of the finest seafood in the world. And so go for it. And have a couple of oysters for me too, and a lobster, please. And, Japanese, Dogaiolo Bianco and Japanese, but even a fish taco is just great with Dogaiolo Bianco. So now let's talk about Dogaiolo Rosso. Now, incidentally, Dogaiolo, doga, means a stave. Many staves put together make a barrel. And so Dogaiolo, it's a Tuscan play on words that basically means it jumps out of the barrel. And because this wine spends 6 months in oak barrels, leftovers from the Carpineto program. So not a lot of new oak here because we want to showcase the fruit. And so the Sangiovese brings in, it's about 70 to 80%, depending on the vintage, brings in, the beautiful floral characters, cherries, currants, violets. And the Cabernet Sauvignon brings in a nice spicy note, leather, dark black currants. And so altogether, the fact that it spends 6 months in oak means also that it is very round, very supple. And just a good glass of wine to have with a whole variety of food. Anything with a tomato, Dogaiolo is perfect. Including, so yesterday in Italy was National Pizza Day. I don't know if it was also in America, but this is a natural pizza from 24 hours ago, which of course we tried it with Dogaiolo, and I confirmed that it works quite well. But you got to put some pepperoni, some meat on there. If it's just vegan, then you go with the Dogaiolo Bianco. So Dogaiolo pizza is great. But a nice pasta with a tomato sauce for sure, grilled meats, and you have also access to great grilled salmon, which we don't have much in the Mediterranean of that, but nevertheless, that is also a great combination. And in the summertime, you can drink Dogaiolo with a slight chill just on the porch. That works too, or watching a nice football game. And as I said, Dogaiolo is the best buy. And when all the magazines from the Cantor to Spectator and Enthusiast all agree, then that means we are doing something right. Now let's go to Chianti Classico. Chianti Classico, the symbol of Chianti Classico, as you can see here, is the black rooster. It is the oldest appellation in the world. It was first defined by Cosimo dei Medici, the Grand Duke of Tuscany, in 1716. So we've been farming this land as a Chianti Classico for over 300 years. And so, we have a lot of experience here, a lot of history. And, it's Chianti Classico. This is what our town, just near the farm, is called Greve in Chianti. And it has a nice triangular shape like this. It's where they make the market once a week, and so it's filled up with all these with the tables that sell vegetables and all kinds of farmers market. Is a beautiful site and great ingredients. And right in the middle of the square is the statue of Giovanni da Verrazzano. Verrazzano was a sailor that 550 years ago was born and set out about 500 years ago to explore North America. He discovered the Bay of New York, and the Hudson River and all of that fun stuff. And so therefore, he's got a bridge named after him in just south of you guys. So he's quite an important guy in that time of discovery, and a wine producer yet today. So his family or his descendants. This is where Carpineto headquarters is. So we have the offices in the bottom, and the Sackett family live above here, and that's where the cellars are to the right. It is one of the coolest climates in the entire appellation. We are at the bottom of the valley at about 1,200 feet, with great temperature excursions between night and day. In this area, of course, we make a Chianti Classico. And it's all galestro, which is a clay schist that is the exact same soil or very similar soil that we find also on our Brunello estate. It's basically just crumbled rocks, and so the soil is very poor, all dry farm. So yields are low, but very perfumey, very elegant wines are made here. Wines that actually do quite well.
We actually have a question on the Chianti and from David on Zoom. And he's curious if Chianti and Chianti Classico are the same, or if there's a differentiation between the names.
Yes, so they are not the same. Let me go back to the map. And so I show you this. So the Chianti Classico is the filet mignon of Chianti. But then here you have Chianti Colli Aretini, here in this area, Colli Senesi, then Colli Lucchesi, Colli Fiorentini. So there are 7 Chiantis, but the center of Chianti, and what the Grand Duke of Tuscany, Cosimo de' Medici, thought was the best. And of course, since we farm there, we totally agree with him, is the Chianti Classico. Actually, it is a very great area on which to make wine. But so the rules between the Chianti Classico and the other Chiantis are a little different, but they still require Sangiovese to be the #1 ingredient. So 80% of the blend. So of course there'll be some stylistic differences because the territory changes a bit, but it's still central Tuscany, and so there's going to be more similarities than differences between all of these. Any other questions while we're talking about Chianti?
We have a few questions, but you might actually cover them in just a moment, so I'll hold off.
So then I'll keep going. So anyways, Chianti Classico, you'll find that on the shelves as well. And as you do the Chianti Classico Riserva, which we're talking about, the Chianti Classico Riserva, it comes actually from these vineyards. They're older vineyards, and they are planted almost to entirely Sangiovese, with a little Canaiolo and Colorino and Mamolo blended in, but our aim is to be very close to 100% Sangiovese for absolute typicity. It is just a great bottle of wine, a wine that has a great pedigree, as you can see from these scores. Of course, we're just focusing on American media here, but also in Italy here we have a lot of very positive reviews. Again, it is a wine that has nice intensity of these beautiful floral components, but also the rose petals and the violets, but also beautiful currants, wild cherry, and it's very succulent on the palate, medium-bodied, good acidity, very long lingering finish. It is a delicious glass of Sangiovese. It's a vacation to Greve and Chianti in a glass. And, this is Graziella, who's a lady that has worked for us for many years, and she makes her own homemade pasta and, of course, homemade sauce. And that is a good setup with a glass of Chianti Classico Riserva, no doubt. This is actually Caterina's grandmother, Eugenia, who is well into her 80s, but can make several square miles of lasagna in very few hours, and they are all delicious. And so that's something that we're accustomed to having with Chianti Classico Riserva, because she lives up there and makes these lasagnas right there. But if you like rare meat, then this is a nice filet mignon, nice and rare, that you can pair with a Chianti Classico Riserva. Particularly from a typical Tuscan species of cow called Chianina, and I'll show you pictures of that beautiful animal later on. In this area, from that little piece of vineyard you see right there, those 30 rows, we make the Gran Selezione, just a few thousand bottles, and occasionally that can be found in the shores near you. Now we go to Montalcino. So Montalcino, again, now we're going from a place where you're allowed to blend Chianti Classico, and also Vino Nobile. In Vino Nobile, you're allowed to blend, to Montalcino, where the appellation law states you have to make this wine out of 100% Sangiovese, which in this case is called Sangiovese Grosso. This is what the town looks like. It's a town that's at almost 2,000 feet in elevation, and it's a beautiful walled city. And of course, walls, we needed them because we've have been invaded by everybody and their brother and cousins, etc. And so all these small little towns have had to defend themselves, often without much result, but nevertheless, they tried. And that we have a nice fortress here that's 800 years old, and it's very beautiful. Now that it hosts a nice wine shop right there, and actually they have a jazz festival here that's organized actually by Banfi, the great Brunello producer, every summer. And this is surrounding the town. It's of course vineyards, and they are everywhere, because that's the closer you get up to the town, the higher you are, the better, the more interesting the wines. And so they are quite close to the town. The valley that goes from Montalcino to Montepulciano, it's called the Val d'Orcia. The Val d'Orcia is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site that has this landscape. It's all wheat fields, grass fields, and is basically just a natural preserve, and sheep are grazing through here. In the background you can see a volcano, extinguished volcano called Damiata, that's 6,000 feet. And here's another picture of the Val d'Orcia, always with the volcano in the backyard, in the background there. And this is where our estate is. It sits at around 1,600 feet, very high up in elevation. It's about 30 acres, surrounded by 100 acres of woods. So we are our own enclave here. And you can see we have our olive grove, obviously. Everybody has their olive grove, and they're very proud of. We make a Rosso, we make a Brunello here, which is quite delicious, because it is a Brunello that comes from a very high altitude vineyard, and because the vineyard has a slight northerly exposure, we are actually one of the last vineyards, if not the last vineyard to be picked in this appellation. It is a wine that is just supremely elegant, very perfumey. It has a great mineral character because it's the soil is galestro, this clay schist that is just prevalent there. The yields here are less than 1 bottle per vine at the end of the day on a long-term average. Tannins are quite important. Very balanced, very complex bottle of wine. On the nose, cherries, plum, tobacco, but also earth and iron flavors, as well as the typical Sangiovese trademark of floral and the cherry component. It's a wine that can age for, much like the Chianti Riserva, can age at least 20 years to 30 years. Really, the only impediment to the long aging of these wines is the patience of the owner of the bottle and their, how well they decide to keep the bottles, or how long they decide to keep the bottles. A perfect pairing on this wine, since it comes from the province of Siena. In the province of Siena, we actually have developed, all the way since the Etruscan time, a local species of pig called Cinta Senese. Cinta means belt. You see how these pigs have a belt? Well, most of them anyways. And that is the Cinta Senese. That's why it's got this name. It's a pig that needs to live outside in the woods, eats acorns, and it grows very, very slowly. So commercially it's not interesting, but they are very nice, I have to say. Leg of lamb is, of course, another good pairing here, but always make it a little on the rare side for Sangiovese, because that appreciates it. And as the Brunello, but Sangiovese in general, ages, then it is interesting to also try perfumey things like truffles. So if you were to make a nice risotto with truffles on a Brunello that's anywhere between 15 and 20 years old, that's the incentive, you see, to keep the bottle for a while. And so that it gives you time to look for a truffle. Anyways, so we also make a Riserva here, and incidentally, these are wines that are aged. So the Rosso 1 year, the Brunello 3 years, and the Riserva 3.5 years in these large Slovenian oak casks. They're about 3,000 liters. That should be somewhere around 800 gallons. So that's the Brunello Riserva, which is being released now. And that's where the cellars are under this house, with the view of Montalcino here in the distance. So now we go quickly to Maremma, which we're not tasting any wines from here or showing any wines, but just to show you the beautiful rolling hillsides here, all red clay. You got olives, you got woods, and you got cork trees, because throughout the Mediterranean basin, cork trees are very prevalent. And so we have those here, and here, the varietals that are made here are Vermentino, and of course Merlot on the coast. Now we go to Montepulciano, and I show you the beautiful town of Montepulciano, 2,000 feet in elevation, snow-covered, 1 to 2 days a year, and so we quickly take a picture because by noon it's gone. But this is what the main square looks like. Look, so it's known as the Pearl of the 15th century. The cathedral is in the back. This is the fountain with the Medici family symbol, the Griffon, which is the symbol of Montepulciano, and the communal building. This is where all the papers from town gets done. The mayor lives there, or works there. And it's a replica of the Palazzo Vecchio in Florence. It's a small scale, of course, of that. And it's just very well worth the trip. And if you're in good shape, come in August, and you can help pull a barrel uphill, which is a race. It's about a mile uphill, pushing this 200, it's an empty barrel, but it still weighs 200 pounds. So definitely requires, to be in shape and great coordination. But this is the vineyard that we have here in this appellation. It is Italy's largest contiguous high-density vineyard. It's almost 300 acres, and you can see this is another volcano down here in the back, extinguished, small brother of Miata. And we have a winery there that we completed 7 years ago. I'm just showing you a couple of pictures of the estate. That's the inside of the winery. We have an old cellar there from the 1700s as well. And we are in the southern part of the appellation. And so therefore, because it is all basically clay, blue clay, we only make Riserva or single vineyards. So we don't make a regular Vino Nobile. And we are the only producer to do this because of the soil on which we grow. And it's a wine that's, it's been in the top 100 few times, and it has quite a pedigree of, long-standing pedigree. So it's you're going to find the Vino Nobile to have riper flavors than Chianti Classico because it's further inland. So climate here is a little bit more continental. Days are warmer, even though nights are a little cooler. But that makes it so that a little bit less acidity, but big, powerful tannins also because we are on pure clay, all dry farmed. And so we make wines that are, require 3 years in the large Slovenian oak casks and then a lot of time before release. We are just releasing 16 now to the market. So we release it when it's almost 5 years old. Now, this is the typical pairing of this, in this region. So with this wine, powerful Sangiovese, over the years, we've developed this ox to work the heavy clay land. And of course, these are animals that at the withers can be at least 6 feet, can weigh a couple thousand pounds. And of course, they make pretty large steaks, but it is called the Chianina beef. So they make these large steaks. It has to be at least 3 to 4 fingers wide, and it has to be cooked over a wood fire, just 5-6 minutes per side, and then 3-4 minutes on the bone, standing up, because the idea is to eat it very rare. And the condiment is coarse ground salt and extra virgin olive oil, which you put on after it's cooked. So that's our beef of choice here, and this is a good selection of when you guys all come, we can fire up the Barbie, and then we can have, of course, the Chianina beef and the Cinta Senese sausages, and I think that would make it quite a good evening with a little Sangiovese. So in this area, we also make the Farnito Cab and single vineyards, and I'll go quickly now. Also, we make Vinsanto, of course, because we need to finish with Cantucci, which are the typical cookies of Tuscany. And that's it. I'll show you a few scores, but just so you know that if you need 90 points, we have those. But if you just are looking for a good glass of wine, we have that too, and at all price points. So I'll go quickly here. Right there. So that's all I have to say. I hope there are many questions, and remember, I specialize in easy ones.
Yes, we do have a lot of great questions. So we have, let's see. So Wendy was actually curious, kind of the distinction of Brunello. Is it a distinct grape variety, a variety of Sangiovese? Is it a wine style? Can you kind of define what that Brunello is?
So Brunello is the nickname of a clone of Sangiovese, which is a clone of Sangiovese Grosso. So Sangiovese Grosso has two subspecies. One is actually is the same exact DNA, which is the Brunello and then the Prugnolo Gentile from Montepulciano. So from a DNA standpoint, they are identical. But the Brunello became famous, very famous, because while in the other parts of Tuscany, the tradition has always been one of blending Sangiovese with other grape varieties, also white grape varieties. In fact, Chianti used to be a white, anywhere between 10 and 20, 30% white grapes going into a blend. It was in 1888 that a noble gentleman by the name of Ferruccio Biondisanti, whose family's descendants still make wine to this day, and search for them in the store because they are not many bottles are made, but they are absolutely magnificent, very classic style Sangiovese. Well, he decided to make 100% Sangiovese out of this one clone he had in his vineyard, and it's still there. It's called the BVS 11, and it still exists. And so the wine was so good that all the neighbors said, that's not a dumb idea to make a red wine only out of red grapes. So you can see how even though we've been making wine since the Etruscan time, it took us 2,900 years to figure out that if you want to make 100% a red wine, and you make it 100% out of red grapes, it turns out better. It ages longer. It's more more colorful, more concentrated. And so that was Ferruccio Biondisanti in 1888. So Brunello is it's a nickname of the clone of Sangiovese, typical of that region, and also gives the name to the wine Brunello di Montalcino.
Awesome. And then we have someone asking what the difference is between a bottle of Chianti and a bottle of Sangiovese in regard to like the grape makeup. Is it just the location that they're sourced in from?
Yeah, I mean, so Sangiovese, they could be the same thing. I mean, so if you were to buy my a Brunello is Sangiovese. My Chianti Classico Riserva or the Gran Selezione, for example, is 100% Sangiovese. But, we have the location, and then we have the grape varietal. Now, if you make an appellation wine from that location, you have to follow a rule book, and that requires you, in the case of Chianti, to make the wine 80% Sangiovese, and then you can have up to 15% international grape varieties, up to a small percentage of white grapes, up to certain 20% of all the other indigenous grape varieties, but it has to be 80% Sangiovese. So a Sangiovese could very well be a Chianti as well, and vice versa. But typically, if a Sangiovese comes from an appellation, it typically will bear the name of the appellation because it's more prestigious.
Awesome. So before we go into any other questions, I figured right now is probably a good time to ask our trivia question. But before I do that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about our 90 Days Around the World promotion. So we're currently offering all of our viewers the chance to win some really great prizes, including a $2,500 gift card to the New Hampshire Liquor and Wine Outlets. We also have some other high quantity gift cards as well, $1,000, a couple hundred. So entering for a chance to win is super simple. You just need to head to your app store and download the Scavify app. That's spelled Scavify. You're going to earn points for every event that you join with us, like tonight. And that is going to be done by entering a code word. So for those of you that are already playing and are listening for that code word, tonight's code word is Carpineto. So the more points you earn, the bigger the prizes that you'll be entered to win. And again, super, super simple to enter. So definitely want to check it out. All the details for that can be found on our 90daysaroundtheworld.com website. So check that out. So now I will move on to the other portion of the night that I'm sure people have been anxiously waiting for, which is the trivia question from tonight's presentation. So for those of you that are joining on Zoom, get your typing fingers ready. So the question that we are going to ask is, what is the typical type of beef from the Vino Noble appellation? So if you want to go ahead and enter your response, we will go ahead and pick the winner. And it looks like I have Lara Haywood. The answer to that one is the Chianina, which was that pretty white cow with the little horns there. So Lara, I will reach out to you via email to get you your signed bottle of wine, which is very, very exciting. So Antonio, just a few more questions if you don't mind. It looks like we have some people that are interested in visiting sometime soon. So what's the best time of year to visit Tuscany without too much heat?
Well, the heat, of course, is in July, August. But for example, the nights it always cools off because it's all hillsides. So yeah, it may be 90 degrees during the day, but I live in a farmhouse without air conditioning, and so my technique is to open the windows when I go to bed at night, and on the farm we get up early, and so then we close the windows and maintain the coolness of the night. So yeah, anyways, it is a dry heat, but it's still hot. I mean, when I went to Las Vegas once, they said, "Oh, it's a dry heat, so don't worry, it's 120 degrees." But it's a dry heat. Well, that's definitely, a lot warmer than where we are. But ours is 90 degrees. It's the warmest it ever gets, really. And it's a dry heat. So I wouldn't be so worried about the heat. I would be just worried about coming when the tourists are not so many. And July and August we're usually overrun. So if you can stay away from those, come May, June, September, October, those are great months. But even now, I bet you we're warmer than you guys.
I can almost guarantee that, and probably year round too. Okay, so we've got a question from Tom, and he's curious how you know which wines to age and for how long. Is it more just a kind of testing process for you guys?
Well, over the years, we have selected vineyards that have the sort of fabric that makes the wines that have the sort of fabric that can age. We've actually gone selecting and looking for those vineyards. That's been our specialty. And so, of course, our wines typically all age, for a long, long time. But not all of them are meant to be aged. For example, Dogaiolo is the one you can age up to 10 years. Is not meant to be a wine that you can age. But any one of the other bottles that you see on the screen there, Vino Nobile, Brunello, Fornito Cab, Chianti Riserva, those are wines you can lay down 20, 30 years because we only produce them in really good vintages anyways. Otherwise, we skip them. And so how do you find out? Well, it also depends on personal taste. So for many years, when we've been doing Christmas or Easter celebrations at home, my sister on the left and my mother, they've never been big fans of older wines because they don't like the tertiary characteristics of Sangiovese, that developed, that it develops as it ages, the underwoods character, the porcini mushrooms, like this, the perfumey character. They like more the youthful character of Sangiovese. And so, typically we are as, 8, 10 people when we get together, and that's just an excuse to open both. We open the young ones, And we open the old ones, and we drink them all with equal pleasure for me. But then my sister will drink the younger ones, and my mother as well. But my wife, my son, my father definitely likes the older wines as well. So it's a personal taste. There is no wrong answers in wine. Drink what you like for sure.
Awesome. And so at the beginning of your presentation, you talked a little bit about the yields of various different years and, how you had some that were better than others. Is that all based on just weather conditions year to year, or is there any other factors that play into, yield?
No, it's weather. So I mentioned that I went to Las Vegas, right? And in the dry heat. And when I was asked if I wanted to go gamble, I said no. At the end of the day, I am gamble adverse because I live in a high stakes gambling environment on a daily basis. 6 months out of the year when the growing season is on. And so, yeah, it is weather, only weather. Of course, we can make some mistakes, but really is the weather that's the determining factor. In fact, Italy, as I said earlier, because we are right in the middle of the Mediterranean is a big benevolent sea. We are blessed with really good weather on an average basis, with a lot of peaks of excellence. So we are lucky in that respect. But certainly, yeah, it's weather. It's that's why we spend a lot of time looking up. Us farmers here. I'll say one more thing. Many people, when they wake up in the morning, they go and read up on the newspaper. Well, we read the newspaper too, but it's just after we've seen 3 different weather stations, and weather maps on our various apps, because that is the number one news that we're interested in, and then everything else is secondary.
Great. Well, Antonio, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been such a pleasure having you, and I'm hopefully next year we can have you back in person at our Winter Wine Spectacular, which I know everyone is, really hoping can happen next year. We were kind of bummed that we couldn't do it this year, but so hopefully we can see you then. Hopefully it's a little bit, tamer weather, although I know that some people have commented saying that they're really disappointed that we don't have a bunch of snow right now. So it could go either way, I think, for us New Englanders. So for those of you that are still joining us tonight, and you enjoyed tonight's event, please be sure to pre-register on our 90daysaroundtheworld.com website for any of the future events that interest you, so you can be entered to win some of the exclusive prizes that our brands and our visitors provide. So tonight, again, that awesome signed bottle of wine will be going to Lara. So congratulations to her. And we actually have a handful of really great wine events for you in the coming weeks as well. So check out that website, see which ones you'd like to attend, and make sure that you pre-register. And if you have any further questions from tonight's event, please don't hesitate to reach out on Facebook. And we're going to do our best to track Antonio down and get all of your questions answered. And again, thank you so much, Antonio. Thank you, Chad, for joining us tonight as well from the New Hampshire Liquor and Wine Outlets. This has just been so great, and I've seen so many comments coming in about how much everyone has learned. We actually received a comment that this was the best explanation of Tuscan grown wines. So if that tells you any, yeah, right, the best. You're already trumping anyone else that may have shared that. So.
Well, thank you, Shannon, and congratulations to Lara. Now remember, don't drink that with lobster. Anyways, thank you,
everyone. We hope to see you all again tomorrow night, as we will be joined by Banfi Vintners CEO and family proprietor, which I know that you mentioned earlier tonight about, you pointed out where they were from.
Saluti to Cristina.
Have a great night, everyone.
Ciao, grazie.
Ciao, Antonio. Thank you.
Thank you.